The Great Hall of the Galactic Council shimmered with lights and colors that no human could have imagined, each alien species occupying their assigned seats, and each one representing the strength and pride of their civilization. They had traveled across light years to witness what they assumed would be a simple ceremonial greeting from a new species. The humans who had finally arrived to join galactic diplomacy. The humans had been talked about for centuries, whispered about in reports of their small conflicts on their homeworld and their rapid technological growth. But no one had ever met them in person, and most considered them primitive compared to the sprawling empires and mighty fleets that now filled the council chamber. As the massive doors opened, the aliens turned their attention toward the entrance, expecting some awkward small creatures, frail and nervous. Instead, what they saw made them pause. The humans walked in with calm, measured steps, dressed in uniformed suits that marked their roles, some smiling politely, some keeping their expressions neutral. It was almost as if they were aware of being studied, and yet it did not matter to them. They had walked into the heart of the galaxy, and they carried themselves like they belonged there. The aliens whispered among themselves, pointing out the humans who were barely taller than some of the smaller species. Yet their eyes held an intensity that unsettled even the bravest council members. At the head of the human group walked a figure that did not speak much but carried a sense of quiet authority. The human Marine. The one who had been rumored to survive countless conflicts on Earth and its colonies. His posture relaxed, but alert, his gaze sweeping the chamber as if he could see everything at once. The other humans followed closely behind, diplomats and scientists who smiled and nodded politely. But even in their smiles, there was a sharpness, an intelligence that suggested they understood far more than they revealed. The council members began the ritual introductions, each alien leader presenting themselves with elaborate gestures and intricate languages, attempting to impress and gauge the humans. The humans responded with simple words and gestures that were polite and measured, yet every move seemed to convey layers of meaning. The aliens were confused. They had expected blunders or hesitations, but found themselves facing creatures who could be described as almost naive, yet beneath the surface there was something almost predatory. Something that made even the most confident leaders shift slightly in their seats, as if a cold wind had passed through the hall. One of the smaller species dared to approach and offer a ceremonial gift, a crystal that contained a miniature galaxy inside. The human ambassador accepted it with a nod and a word of thanks, and placed it carefully in a container that shimmered with unknown technology. The alien gasped. This was not a container for display. It was a device capable of analyzing and replicating the energy patterns within seconds. The alien ambassador tried to mask his astonishment, but the other council members noticed and whispered among themselves. The humans did not appear to notice or care. They continued to walk with poise, speaking occasionally to one another in low tones, the Marine scanning every corner, every movement, every nuance of alien behavior. The aliens began to notice subtle things. The humans did not flinch when threatened by the towering species at the far end. They did not recoil when creatures with sharp claws and deadly reputations approached. They stood firm. They smiled politely and spoke words that seemed harmless, yet carried the weight of subtle control. The council attempted to begin diplomatic talks, focusing on minor trade agreements and territorial boundaries. The humans listened carefully, sometimes asking questions that revealed misunderstandings or gaps in alien knowledge. It seemed almost childlike. But each question revealed more about the humans' comprehension of alien society than anyone expected. The Marine finally spoke in a calm voice, explaining in detail concepts that made several alien delegates squirm. Words like strategy, dominant, survival ethics, and consequences. They spoke of war not as a threat but as a tool, a calculation, a necessary step in maintaining balance. The aliens had no concept of human war. Their wars were brutal and decisive, yet guided by rules and codes unknown in the galaxy. The humans' ability to reduce complex moral dilemmas into clear choices made the aliens uneasy, yet fascinated. The humans moved with precision and timing, almost as if they had rehearsed every step and word. Yet their movements were natural, not forced. There was no arrogance, only confidence and the calm that comes from knowing one is capable of handling anything. The council tried to maintain composure, discussing minor points of trade and diplomacy, but every so often they would glance at each other, exchanging looks that revealed a dawning realization. that perhaps humans were not to be underestimated. The Marine moved silently among them, observing their reactions, noting their fear and excitement, noting how easily they assumed they understood humans, yet how completely they were wrong. The humans did not show power. They showed presence. They did not demand respect. They commanded it with every word, every glance, every subtle gesture. As the meeting drew to a close, the humans stood together for a final bow and left the council hall. The doors closed behind them, leaving a hushed silence. The aliens could not speak for a moment. They could not comprehend the combination of humility and dominance that humans displayed. They had underestimated these creatures. They had assumed that small size and polite manners meant weakness, yet every instinct screamed danger. Every instinct screamed that the humans were apex predators cloaked in the mask of diplomacy. And as the first reports of the humans' arrival began to circulate across the galaxy, whispers spread that something was different, that something had changed. And for the first time in galactic history, a species had arrived that no one could afford to misjudge. After leaving the council hall, the humans returned to their flagship, a sleek vessel that gleamed under the light of the distant stars. It was a ship that seemed simple to the untrained eye, yet every surface hummed with quiet energy. Every panel contained technology that no alien civilization had managed to replicate. The Marine walked through the corridors, his steps echoing softly. The rest of the humans moved with purpose. Scientists checking instruments, diplomats reviewing notes, and the humans who were soldiers training with silent efficiency. It was not just a ship. It was a statement of capability, of mastery of environment and control of chaos. The aliens watched from observation satellites and listening posts, trying to understand the humans they had studied. Every report, every rumor, yet nothing prepared them for the reality. Humans were creatures of contradictions, calm yet violent, polite yet lethal, humble yet terrifyingly confident. They had assumed that humans would be awed by the council chamber and the advanced technology surrounding them. Yet the humans had walked in and imposed their presence without a word of arrogance. The Marine had known this would happen. He had seen it before on Earth, when small nations underestimated humans and paid dearly. He had learned to measure reactions, to exploit assumptions. The aliens did not realize that diplomacy for humans was a game where every move was calculated and every response anticipated. As the ship jumped to light speed, the humans gathered in the central chamber, a room that looked simple, yet contained arrays of sensors and holographic displays that mapped entire star systems. The Marine stood at the center, observing the galaxy in ways that no alien could comprehend, his eyes moving from system to system, noting resources, military strength, population numbers, and planetary conditions. He spoke quietly to the diplomats, outlining scenarios that would take weeks of alien calculations to understand. He spoke of deterrence and preemption of conflict as if it were child's play. The diplomats nodded, taking notes and recording data, but their eyes were on him. The Marine was not concerned with appearances. He was concerned with reality. He understood the true nature of the galaxy and of the threats and opportunities that lay within it. The aliens believed that they were the dominant civilizations, yet the humans saw the cracks, the weaknesses, the miscalculations, and they smiled quietly to themselves, knowing that those who underestimated them would soon learn harsh lessons elsewhere in the galaxy. The first delegation arrived from a nearby empire, a species of towering insectoids. Their presence was imposing, their voices shrill and resonant, demanding attention. They came with threats veiled as questions. They had heard of humans through second- and third-hand reports and assumed that humans would be weak and easily intimidated. The Marine met them calmly. He listened to their questions, responding with measured words that seemed polite but carried sharp undertones. Every phrase was chosen to reveal more about their intelligence and to challenge assumptions without aggression. He explained human philosophy, of conflict, survival ethics, and war crimes, concepts that the insectoids did not understand. Their antennae twitched nervously and their limbs moved with hesitation. They had expected compliance, or at least confusion, yet they were confronted with clarity and subtle dominance. The human diplomats expanded on trade agreements, discussing resource sharing and interstellar law. Yet their words carried implications far beyond the surface. They spoke of alliances and treaties in ways that suggested Humans could foresee consequences that spanned decades. The insectoids attempted to assert superiority, pointing to their fleets and their technology they spoke of. Conquest and domination. Yet the humans merely smiled politely, noting the patterns of their behavior, predicting the moves they would make years into the future. The insectoids left the meeting confused and unsettled. They had believed themselves strong and feared by others, yet they had faced humans and discovered a presence that was neither arrogant nor weak, but something alien to their understanding, something instinctively dangerous, yet controlled across the galaxy. Reports of the humans began to circulate faster than any information network could normally manage, whispers and rumors spreading from system to system, that humans were different, that they were apex predators, pretending to be diplomats. And as these whispers reached the ears of the oldest civilizations, they began to revise histories they had written about humanity. They had imagined humans as small, fragile creatures capable only of minor skirmishes, yet they had survived and dominated their own world against countless odds. Now they faced a species that could combine cunning strategy with raw physical prowess and the ability to think decades ahead. The Marine convened his own council aboard the ship, a small group of humans who specialized in intelligence, strategy, and diplomacy. They discussed the reports they had received and noted the areas where alien assumptions were strongest. They laughed quietly at the misconceptions the galaxy held about them. They knew that every species believed they were unique, that every species believed themselves clever. Yet humans had learned to survive not by being clever but by being adaptable, ruthless, and coordinated. They moved next to the outer colonies, establishing communication channels with humans who lived on worlds that alien civilizations had assumed were unimportant. Yet these worlds were rich in resources and training grounds for humans who were learning to navigate alien diplomacy while preparing for potential conflict. The humans' presence alone was changing the dynamics of the galaxy. They did not seek immediate conquest, yet their understanding of strategy and survival ensured that no species could ignore them. No alliance could be considered safe, and no species could act without considering human perception. The Marine walked to the observation deck, gazing at the stars, each one a potential challenge or opportunity. He smiled slightly, knowing that the galaxy had just begun to understand that humans were apex predators disguised as diplomats, and that the day of underestimation had ended forever. The humans had arrived at the neutral system, where three of the galaxy's oldest empires intersected. It was a place where countless wars had begun and ended, and where treaties were often more dangerous than battles. The humans' flagship entered orbit calmly, as alien observers watched with a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. The Marine gathered the human diplomats and advisors in the central chamber. The holographic star maps flickered to life, displaying the positions and movements of alien fleets, trade routes, and orbital defenses. The humans discussed quietly among themselves, analyzing patterns of behavior and predicting potential threats. Every human on that ship understood that diplomacy for them was not about appearances or words. It was a game of survival strategy and demonstration of capability. The first delegation arrived, a species of crystalline beings. Their bodies refracted light and made them appear dazzling yet cold. They moved with a precision that suggested discipline but also rigidity. They carried with them ambassadors and military advisors. Their language was complex, full of tonal variations that humans could decipher only. With advanced translators, the Marine welcomed them politely, noting the subtle cues in posture, communication, and even the rate of energy emission from their crystalline forms. He allowed the diplomats to speak first, observing the tension and hesitation. In their presentation, they assumed superiority because they controlled several strategic trade routes and possessed technology that could rival humans in raw firepower. The human diplomats spoke in measured tones, describing trade and mutual benefit, yet their words were layered with implications about consequences of misjudging humans and underestimating their capabilities. The crystalline beings attempted to assert dominance, presenting detailed diagrams of their fleets and hypothetical scenarios of enforcement. Yet the humans listened calmly, asking questions that revealed gaps in logic and assumptions without ever raising their voices or showing overt aggression. The next delegation was of a serpentine species known across the galaxy for cunning, espionage, and manipulation. They slithered into the chamber, their eyes scanning every corner, every human gesture, every shift in light. They expected humans to be easy prey to manipulate, to intimidate, or to deceive. Yet the humans anticipated their moves, observing subtle patterns in speech timing and movement. They spoke of treaties and shared intelligence, presenting humans with information designed to confuse and trap. Yet the humans responded with clarity, pointing out inconsistencies in data and revealing insight into intentions. The serpentine species recoiled internally. They had expected confusion or subservience. Yet they found humans calm, methodical, and frighteningly precise. In thought, the Marine stepped forward, explaining that humans valued transparency and strategy, and that they recognized deception immediately. He spoke of ethical parameters of warfare and negotiation of survival. And they realized that humans combined morality with lethal efficiency in ways no other species could comprehend. The final delegation arrived late and enforced a collective of insectile creatures whose homeworld had been lost to centuries of internal conflict. They carried pride and desperation, and they assumed the humans would be easy to intimidate. Their voices and movements were aggressive. Yet the Marine observed subtle hesitation. Their fleets were positioned defensively, not offensively. They were bluffing, and the humans recognized the bluff immediately. The diplomats engaged the insectiles in conversation, asking about resource allocation and defense strategies. Every question was designed to reveal weaknesses, to expose miscalculations, to subtly force admission of risk. And the insectiles responded with frustration and missteps. The humans nodded politely, noting every error and filing it away for strategic reference. The discussions stretched for hours, yet the humans never faltered. They moved through the complex web of alien ego and intimidation with grace and lethal intelligence. Each gesture, each word, each question was calibrated to maximize information extraction and to subtly project power without overt conflict. The Marine watched all of this unfold, knowing that humans had reached a point in galactic diplomacy where appearances no longer mattered. Only outcomes and efficiency mattered. The aliens left the council chamber with confusion and fear. In their expressions, they had expected humans to be reactive, simple creatures. They had expected to dominate discussions and manipulate negotiations, yet they had been met with calm calculation, insight, and subtle intimidation. The humans walked back to their ship, leaving a trail of speculation and doubt. The galaxy had begun to shift in perception. No species could ignore humans or assume weakness. Every action humans took demonstrated capability, adaptability, and dominance. Yet with a surface of civility and diplomacy, the Marine convened the human advisory team once more, discussing lessons learned and opportunities identified, weaknesses exploited and strengths reinforced. They laughed quietly among themselves, understanding that they had not yet begun to show the full extent of their capabilities. Every species in the room underestimated them, yet every alien observer was forced to reconsider history's myths and assumptions about humanity. Humans were apex predators disguised as diplomats. Predators who could analyze, predict, and survive every encounter while simultaneously maintaining appearances of civility. The Marine looked out at the stars, contemplating the next phase of engagement in the galaxy. He knew that humans would continue to navigate political intrigue and alien egos. They would continue to test boundaries and push expectations, yet they would do it with intelligence, precision, and lethal adaptability. The story of human dominance and perception would spread quietly through the galaxy, becoming legend, whispered from one alien civilization to another, that humans were not merely another species. They were a force of survival strategy and controlled aggression, a species that could anticipate decades of movement and manipulation and emerge with advantage. Every diplomatic engagement was a demonstration, subtle but undeniable assertion of human supremacy. The galaxy had begun to understand the truth that humans were apex predators, and that any who underestimated them would pay dearly. It was a realization that would reshape alliances, treaties, and conflicts for generations, and the humans aboard their ship returned to their routines, calmly, methodically preparing for the next encounter, knowing that the universe had just taken its first real measure of humanity, and that the real game had only begun. The humans did not pause long after their last diplomatic engagement. They traveled to the edge of the Tyrathian sector, a region notorious for its lawless systems and pirate-controlled trade lanes. The aliens there had heard rumors of human efficiency and lethal subtlety, yet none had expected them to arrive personally. The flagship descended into the system, slowly scanning for threats. The Marine walked through the command deck, observing crew members calibrating weapons, scanning for anomalies, and monitoring alien signals. The humans were prepared for anything, yet they projected calm confidence that unnerved sensors and observers alike. The first signal arrived from a Tyrathian pirate lord, a massive creature with scales like blackened steel and eyes that glowed like molten cores. It demanded tribute and loyalty, threatening fleets and claiming entire sectors as their own. The humans responded not with anger or submission, but with questions. The Marine directed the translators to engage, and the human diplomat asked about logistics, trade limitations, supply lines, and patterns of movement. Every question revealed gaps and flaws in the pirate lord's network. They claimed power, yet the humans understood that raw aggression could be broken down and predicted through careful observation and interrogation. The pirates attempted intimidation, displaying massive ships, weapon batteries, and fleets in aggressive formation. Yet the humans moved calmly through calculations, predicting fuel usage, fleet coordination, and even crew fatigue. The pirate lord grew frustrated, assuming humans would panic or submit. Yet every observation the humans shared was neutral, yet subtly threatening, showing that any misstep would be noted and exploited. The humans offered a proposal, trade alliances, and navigation rights. Yet every offer carried implicit terms and consequences that the pirates could not fully discern. The Marine stepped forward, detailing security protocols and fleet movements without revealing the full strength of humans, while simultaneously giving enough data to show that humans were aware of every action and every hidden intent. The pirates realized that bluffing and intimidation were ineffective. They were dealing with creatures who could anticipate deception and calculate outcomes across dozens of variables without hesitation. The humans then moved to another system within the sector, a cluster of moons occupied by the Varenthian collective, a species known for their obsession with hierarchy and honor. The humans entered the negotiation chambers and observed the Varenthian leaders posturing as if they could dominate through tradition and force. Yet humans understood that cultural arrogance could be used against opponents, subtly showing weaknesses without insult. The Varenthian Council presented a series of ceremonial challenges claiming to test honor, yet the humans analyzed each action, predicting outcomes and potential errors they completed. Challenges not by imitation but by calculation and adaptation, subtly demonstrating capability without breaking protocol. The Marine explained that humans valued performance and results over ceremony, and that the consequences of misjudging their patience and strategic thinking would be severe. The Varenthian Council struggled to mask fear. The humans had shown calm, yet undeniable superiority. They could see that traditions and assumptions were failing to control outcomes, and that a species who appeared diplomatic could be utterly lethal in strategic application. The humans then received an unexpected message from an unknown fleet approaching rapidly. It was a coalition of mercenary races who had been hired to challenge humans, assuming them easy prey. The humans readied their fleet but did not raise alarms. They allowed the coalition to enter orbit, observing every formation, every signal, every maneuver. The Marine coordinated the humans, using predictive modeling, anticipating enemy movements and exploiting overconfidence. The mercenary coalition assumed humans would react emotionally or attempt direct engagement. Yet humans moved with patience, precision, and cunning, subtly maneuvering to isolate leaders and reveal weak coordination. They communicated with calm and clarity, showing that humans were aware of every attempt at deception, without revealing the full extent of their strength. The aliens began to hesitate, doubting every calculation of advantage. They had previously assumed humans would be reactive, aggressive, or easily intimidated. Yet they were met with calculated patience, controlled aggression, and a terrifying ability to anticipate actions before they occurred. The humans then presented an ultimatum, not with threat but with logic, showing that surrendering certain systems peacefully would maintain stability while resistance would guarantee loss. The coalition faltered internally, The humans had dissected their strategies and intentions, showing that they could manipulate outcomes without fighting, yet leaving no doubt that failure to comply would be fatal. The Marine observed quietly, knowing that this demonstration of strategic superiority was more important than destruction and that humans had established dominance not through violence but through understanding and controlled projection of power. The galaxy began to hear rumors whispered from system to system that humans were not only adaptable apex predators but that they could manipulate diplomacy, warfare, and strategy with a combination of logic, empathy, and lethal efficiency that no other species could match. Humans had redefined the rules of engagement and survival. The pirate lord submitted part of his fleet. Offering allegiance, the Varenthian collective recalculated their alliances and protocols. The mercenary coalition disbanded, fearing loss, yet curious and wary of human capabilities. The Marine convened the human team once more, discussing lessons learned, reviewing intelligence gathered, and preparing for the next wave of contact. Every member understood that humans had begun a new chapter in galactic relations, that caution, respect, and fear would now follow them wherever they traveled. Every negotiation, every observation, every display of capability was a subtle assertion of dominance, a clear message that humans could not be underestimated, and that the galaxy had entered an era where diplomacy was intertwined with strategic predation. The humans aboard their ships continued their routines calmly and methodically, preparing for encounters yet unseen, knowing that every interaction reshaped assumptions and that their presence alone altered the balance of power in every system they touched. The galaxy had begun to recognize the truth that humans were apex predators pretending to be diplomats, and that any who failed to respect that reality would face consequences carefully orchestrated, inevitable, and utterly inescapable. The story of human influence spread quietly through sectors like ripples in a dark ocean, growing with every encounter and every observation, that humans were not merely participants in galactic affairs, but definers of strategy and survival. The humans had begun to carve their presence across the galaxy, but nothing tested their patience, skill, and adaptability like the emergence of the Clithar Dominion, a species whose entire civilization was built on conquest, ruthlessness, and unquestioned obedience. Fleets of black and silver ships emerged from subspace corridors that had remained unmonitored for centuries. The Clithar considered humans an insignificant anomaly, a species too fragile and undisciplined to survive beyond their homeworld. Yet the humans anticipated the arrival through a combination of sensors, intelligence gathering, and behavioral analysis. The Marine assembled the command team briefing, every officer on predicted Clithar strategies. The humans did not fear but recognized that underestimating this opponent could be catastrophic. The first encounter took place near a neutral system, with vast asteroid fields that could conceal or trap vessels. Humans positioned their fleet in patterns that maximized maneuverability, observation, and control without revealing the true scale of their forces. The Clithar opened communication channels with demands of surrender, proclamations of superiority, and threats of extermination. But the humans responded with calm inquiries and observations, questions about supply routes, fleet coordination, and resource allocation. Every response from the Clithar revealed cracks in their rigid hierarchy, hesitation in decision-making, and over-reliance on intimidation. The Marine noted these subtleties, explaining that human advantage lay not in sheer firepower, but in patience, prediction, and the ability to exploit overconfidence and rigidity. While the Clithar mobilized their massive ships, humans observed, calculated, and repositioned their forces, subtly creating psychological pressure that disoriented the enemy. Without firing a single shot, the humans then initiated a series of simulated engagements, projecting virtual maneuvers that suggested overwhelming strength, strategic encirclement, and simultaneous attacks from multiple vectors. The Clithar scrambled, attempting to counter what they assumed were real threats. Every reaction fed into human algorithms predicting behavior and identifying the weakest elements. Of command, the Marine orchestrated communication showing confidence, coordination, and deliberate control. The Clithar began to perceive that humans could anticipate their moves not through clairvoyance, but through observation, logic, and ruthless efficiency. Every fleet maneuver the Clithar executed was countered or anticipated with precision that left alien commanders questioning their own assumptions and the loyalty of subordinates within moments. The humans had destabilized the Clethar command structure, sowing confusion and hesitation, without a single human vessel being damaged. The humans then deployed specialized envoys to conduct face-to-face negotiations on a nearby moon. They carried no weapons visible, yet their presence exuded authority and strategic awareness. They analyzed Clethar responses, gestures and terminology detecting subtle signs of uncertainty and fear. Every question was calculated to reveal weaknesses while maintaining the illusion of diplomacy. The Clethar commanders, unaccustomed to this type of interaction, began to falter. Their rigid codes of honor, discipline, and aggression proved brittle against humans who combined logic, patience, and subtle intimidation. The Marine guided the human envoys in demonstrating that resistance would not only fail, but result in a complete collapse of command and fleet cohesion. The Clethar struggled internally, attempting to maintain control, but their obsession with hierarchy and unquestioned obedience meant that any hint of hesitation cascaded into chaos across their fleets, while humans continued calm observation, subtly reinforcing that every action and misstep was being recorded, analyzed, and prepared for exploitation. Finally, the humans initiated controlled displays of force, demonstrating precise targeting, resource allocation, and coordination while maintaining minimal actual aggression. These calculated maneuvers conveyed to the Clethar that humans were capable of overwhelming destruction, yet restrained by discipline and strategic foresight. The psychological impact was immediate. The Clethar began to reconsider objectives, recall forward elements, and reevaluate chain-of-command decisions. The Marine observed quietly as humans communicated through calm but firm orders, projecting an aura of inevitability and tactical mastery. The humans then presented an ultimatum not framed as threat but as logic, a choice to negotiate terms, retreat, or face irreversible loss. Every scenario outlined the consequences of miscalculation and the benefits of compliance. The Clethar commanders realized too late that they were facing a species capable of simultaneously predicting, adapting, and exploiting weaknesses at a scale they could not comprehend. Without the need for intimidation or emotional provocation, the humans maintained control, patience, and composure, turning potential engagement into a demonstration of authority and strategy that left even seasoned Clethar leaders in awe and fear. The galaxy watched as humans reshaped interactions, not with violence alone, but with a combination of intellect, foresight, and an ability to project lethal capability while appearing diplomatic. The Marine recorded all data, noting that humans had begun to redefine the concept of power by blending adaptability, observation, and controlled projection. The Clethar eventually withdrew, partially conceding territory and agreeing to new terms. Their perception of humans forever altered. Every fleet movement, negotiation, and display of controlled dominance had reinforced that humans were apex predators, masquerading as diplomats, and that underestimating them was an existential error. Across the galaxy, systems transmitted signals of this encounter, whispering that humans were not merely participants in galactic affairs but redefiners of strategy, survival, and diplomacy. Every alien civilization observing the results began to reassess assumptions about human capabilities, and potential humans returned to their routines aboard ships, calmly continuing preparation for the next encounter. Knowing that each engagement reshaped galactic perception, every observation expanded their influence, and that patience, calculation, and strategic mastery would continue to define the humans' place as apex predators and architects of their own destiny. The galaxy had begun to whisper about humans and their uncanny ability to transform every encounter into a demonstration of calculated supremacy. The humans did not seek fame or fear. They sought understanding and control through observation, adaptation, and precise execution. Now, after the confrontation with the Clethar Dominion, every major civilization recognized that humans were not ordinary participants in galactic affairs, but unpredictable forces capable of turning diplomacy into dominance and patience into weapon. The humans had begun to receive delegations from multiple systems, some curious, some cautious, and some openly hostile. Every interaction became an exercise in perception management. The humans listened, questioned, and observed, noting cultural nuances, power hierarchies, and psychological tendencies without revealing the full extent of their capabilities. Fleets traveled between systems maintaining readiness while simultaneously projecting an image of approachable authority. The Marine coordinated these movements with meticulous attention, ensuring that every display of force, every convoy and every envoy sent signals of controlled mastery without aggression. The humans deployed specialized analysts to study alien communication patterns, environmental adaptations, and tactical doctrines, collecting immense amounts of data that would inform future interactions and engagements. Even seemingly casual social encounters were used to reinforce human adaptability, intelligence, and calm authority. The galaxy began to realize that humans could destabilize assumptions without fighting, predict behaviors without intrusion, and assert dominance without hostility. Every civilization that observed the humans noted a pattern that was both unsettling and inspiring. The humans combined rapid learning with strategic patience, creating an aura of inevitability, a sense that resistance was not only futile but intellectually naive. Across diplomatic councils, human representatives engaged in what seemed like ordinary negotiations, while subtly shaping the agenda to favor outcomes that reinforced their influence. Allies and adversaries alike were forced to recognize that humans were capable of manipulating perception, probability, and consequence in ways that transcended conventional power structures. While the humans continued to expand influence, they also tested the limits of interstellar law, ethics, and protocol, not recklessly, but with calculated precision, exploring weaknesses in the systems that other species relied on to maintain control, and asserting humanity's ability to operate outside conventional expectations without violating core principles. The Marine observed that even the most disciplined alien commanders struggled to reconcile their understanding of strategy with the humans' intuitive yet methodical approach. The humans conducted fleet exercises that appeared routine, but were designed to subtly signal strength, coordination, and the capacity for decisive action without initiating conflict. These exercises, coupled with diplomatic interactions, created a pervasive sense that humans were apex predators disguised as participants in political theater. Across research stations, humans observed natural phenomena, weaponized knowledge, and environmental variables that could influence strategic decision-making, further expanding their toolkit for influence and survival. The galaxy began to see that human capability was multidimensional, combining intellect, psychology, technology, and resilience in ways that could not be easily countered. The Marine organized simulations of potential scenarios, from hostile encounters to complex negotiations, teaching humans to anticipate, adapt, and act with precision while maintaining composure. Every scenario reinforced that humans were capable of turning uncertainty into advantage and chaos into opportunity. Every alien species that interacted with humans began to understand that traditional tactics, intimidation, and strict hierarchy were ineffective against a species that combined observation, calculation, and adaptability. With relentless determination, humans demonstrated their ability to balance aggression with restraint, power with diplomacy, and foresight with improvisation in every engagement. No matter how minor or seemingly trivial, this created a galaxy-wide perception that humans were a force whose potential was limitless, not because they relied on overwhelming firepower, but because they relied on intelligence, perception, and a ruthless understanding of cause and effect. Every human mission, whether in research, diplomacy, or fleet movement, reinforced the narrative that humans were not only capable of surviving any encounter, but capable of reshaping the rules of engagement entirely. The Marine observed that humans had begun to redefine the concept of deterrence, not through fear or destruction, but through unpredictability, strategic mastery, and the ability to exploit weakness while preserving the illusion of ordinary interaction. The galaxy watched as humans negotiated territorial disputes, mediated conflicts, and conducted scientific collaborations while simultaneously ensuring that no species could underestimate their capacity for decisive action. The humans maintained their calm, their patience, and their ability to observe and adapt while allowing alien species to believe they were in control. The subtlety of human influence was unparalleled, and every alien observer recognized that what appeared as diplomacy was actually a demonstration of strategic dominance. The humans' reputation expanded from being merely a resilient species to apex predators who could project authority, predict behavior, and influence outcomes across multiple systems without overt aggression. Every encounter reinforced the message that humans were unlike any other species in the galaxy, and that underestimating them was an existential error. Even the most powerful civilizations began to treat human interactions with caution, curiosity, and a deep awareness that humans could turn any situation to their advantage without violating their principles, and that the galaxy itself was beginning to bend around the realization that humans were apex predators pretending to be diplomats, and that this pretense was perhaps the most dangerous weapon any species could encounter. The galaxy had changed forever as humans continued to move among the stars. Each system, now aware that what they had assumed was diplomacy, was actually apex predation disguised in the form of conversation. The humans had proven that patience, observation, and intellect were weapons as sharp as any beam or missile, and that restraint could be as terrifying as violence. Every alien species that had once dismissed humans as primitive now struggled to comprehend the scale of their influence. Humans had mastered the art of perception management, making allies, adversaries, and observers question every interaction and every decision. The Marine observed fleets, scientific expeditions, and diplomatic missions converging in a subtle symphony of strategic intent where humans maintained dominance without overt confrontation. The humans' ability to adapt instantly to new technologies, tactics, and social norms allowed them to anticipate the moves of species that had once believed themselves superior. They demonstrated an uncanny ability to exploit psychological weaknesses, environmental advantages, and political fractures without violating the facade of ordinary participation in galactic society. The humans had reached a point where their presence alone commanded attention, respect, and caution. Even civilizations with enormous fleets and sophisticated technologies realized that their strategies, which had been effective for millennia, were now insufficient against a species that could think, learn, and react faster than any traditional calculation could predict. The Marine coordinated a final simulation in which humans would demonstrate the ultimate lesson to the galaxy, a combined fleet exercise, an open diplomatic summit, and simultaneous scientific breakthroughs were orchestrated not to intimidate, but to showcase that humans could control multiple outcomes simultaneously. Without appearing to do so, the summit drew representatives from every major civilization, some reluctantly, some out of curiosity, and some with suspicion. Each alien arrived with preconceptions, assumptions about human weakness, and expectations that humans would act predictably. But from the moment the humans arrived, calm, composed, and observant, the energy in the room shifted. Every conversation was measured, every gesture intentional, every question asked and answered with layers of meaning. Humans spoke of cooperation, shared knowledge, and mutual benefit while subtly signaling that they held the capacity to enforce any decision, manipulate probabilities, and respond to threats in ways that were both immediate and invisible. Outside observers could see that even a minor decision by a human envoy would ripple across multiple systems, influencing trade, diplomacy, and military. Positioning, the aliens began to understand that humans could execute strategies that spanned decades, species, and galaxies with precision while maintaining the appearance of casual interaction. Even when simulations of potential conflicts were presented, humans demonstrated restraint, control, and rapid adaptability, showing that they could neutralize threats without unnecessary destruction. The Marine watched as humans balanced multiple factions, mediating disputes, deploying resources, and subtly asserting dominance in ways that no species had anticipated. The aliens realized that every calculation they had made about humans was insufficient, and that every assumption about human limitation was fundamentally flawed. Humans had taken the apex predator concept and applied it to the social, political, and intellectual arenas. The galaxy had begun to whisper the truth that humans were not merely participants in galactic politics, but the defining force around which events now revolved. Every civilization that had resisted or doubted humans now had to reconsider alliances, strategies, and their understanding of power. The humans continued to act with clarity, patience, and relentless observation, turning diplomacy, science, and negotiation into instruments of influence. Every alien delegate left the summit and the simulations with a profound realization that humans were not constrained by conventional measures of strength or logic, and that their adaptability, strategic insight, and patience were tools of dominance that could not be countered with traditional force across fleets, stations, and worlds. Humans had established a network of influence so subtle that many had not recognized it as dominance, yet the Marine understood that this was intentional. Every move had been calculated, every appearance of restraint designed to amplify the humans' reputation as apex predators hiding behind diplomacy. Humanity had redefined the rules of engagement not through fear, not through destruction, but through perception, calculation, and anticipation. Every species that observed or interacted with humans had learned, consciously or unconsciously, that humans could exploit any situation and emerge stronger, wiser, and more capable. The galaxy had begun to acknowledge that the humans' patience was not weakness, their diplomacy was not naivety, and their restraint was not hesitation. The humans could act decisively, strategically, and lethally when required, but they preferred to operate under the guise of cooperation, analysis, and observation. This pretense was the ultimate weapon, for no species could predict when humans would unleash their full potential. The Marine coordinated a final ceremonial display where humans showcased their fleet maneuvering, scientific discoveries, and diplomatic skill in concert, demonstrating that humanity's reach extended beyond technology into strategy, psychology, and influence. The display left no doubt that humans were apex predators, capable of turning any encounter to their advantage while appearing completely ordinary. The galaxy collectively understood that underestimating humans was an existential error that even the most powerful fleets, the most advanced civilizations, and the most cunning diplomats could not counteract over time. The whispers solidified into acknowledgement and then into respect and caution. Humans had achieved something unprecedented across the stars. They had proven that dominance did not require fear, conquest, or annihilation, but intellect, observation, adaptability, and patient calculation. As the humans departed the summit and the simulations, they left behind a galaxy profoundly changed, a galaxy that now knew that humans could influence, dominate, and survive in ways no other species could manage, and that the calm, composed, and measured humans walking among them were, in truth, apex predators pretending to be diplomats, and that this pretense was the deadliest weapon in the universe. The galaxy fell silent in the moments that followed. Humans had moved among stars for centuries, and yet this moment was different. Every civilization, from the smallest mining colony to the largest interstellar empire, now knew with absolute clarity that humans were not to be underestimated. Humans had mastered a form of existence that combined intellect, instinct, and intuition in ways that no other species could even comprehend. The humans did not rely on sheer numbers or overwhelming firepower, but on observation, anticipation, and calculated decision-making. They could turn the chaos of a political dispute into a strategic advantage, and the turmoil of a battlefield into a canvas for demonstrating precision and restraint. Every encounter humans had ever engaged in now appeared as a carefully orchestrated lesson in dominance, hidden beneath layers of diplomacy and civility. The aliens who had once mocked the humans, who had dismissed them as unpredictable and primitive, now saw the truth that humanity's unpredictability was a weapon and their restraint a trap. The Marine walked through the command hub, watching humans coordinate fleets, negotiate alliances, and initiate scientific breakthroughs, all in perfect harmony, and the Marine realized that the galaxy had been preparing for this revelation unknowingly. Every species had acted according to patterns and assumptions that humans had already anticipated, and adapted to each move made by other civilizations was already accounted for in human calculations, and yet it seemed effortless to everyone watching. Humans smiled, conversed, and appeared casual. Even as their strategies shifted entire sectors of space, every alien delegate left the human stations with a sense of awe and unease, knowing that humans had achieved what no one else could. They had reached a level of mastery where diplomacy was a form of influence, warfare was an art, and observation was a weapon. The humans continued their path across the stars, leaving subtle markers of their presence everywhere they went. Every civilization now approached humans with a mixture of respect, caution, and curiosity. No one dared to assume that humans would act predictably, and no one dared to attempt to control or deceive them. The Marine watched as humans coordinated with alien allies, managed conflicts, and demonstrated scientific prowess all at once. And the realization dawned that humans had transformed every encounter into a demonstration of apex dominance, without a single aggressive move. Their patience was a snare, their intelligence a weapon, and their calmness a threat. The galaxy had understood that humans were apex predators, pretending to be diplomats, and that this pretense was the most lethal power anyone could face. Humans had taken the raw potential of their species and refined it into an unstoppable force, a force that did not need fear, intimidation, or brute strength to command obedience, respect, and influence across countless systems. Humans had shown that survival, dominance, and leadership were not about who could destroy the most, but about who could see the furthest, predict the clearest, and act with precision and subtlety that no other species could match. And as the stars stretched endlessly around them, humans continued walking among civilizations, leaving trails of astonishment, respect, and cautious admiration behind them. The Marine observed the humans as they smiled and joked with alien diplomats, while simultaneously coordinating fleets, managing conflicts, and shaping the political landscape. It was clear that humanity's reign had begun quietly and visibly, and yet irrevocably. The galaxy would never forget the day humans showed that their patience was not weakness, their diplomacy was not naivety, and their calmness was not hesitation. Every species now understood that humans could unleash their full potential at any moment, and that attempting to underestimate them was an error, with consequences no one could survive. The humans had achieved what no other species had: the ultimate combination of intellect, strategy, and apex instinct. They were predators hiding behind smiles, calculating behind gestures, and reigning over the stars without ever appearing to dominate the galaxy, but dominating it completely, and the aliens would never be able to unsee it or undo it. The humans had rewritten the rules of interaction and survival among the stars, proving that the apex of existence was not power alone, but patience, strategy, and intelligence. And the Marines smiled, knowing that humanity's story had only just begun as humans turned, waved at their allies and enemies alike, and continued their path across the cosmos, leaving the galaxy forever changed, knowing that every system, every fleet, and every civilization would from this day forward treat humanity with the respect, caution, and fear they had so quietly earned. The end.